hold of your inheritance. You know, it's interesting. Even when Jesus was on earth, there was a moment in time where Jesus went through an adoption ceremony. For 30 years, Jesus lived on earth, did not do one miracle. You know, the first miracle was, he did. When? Something happened. Something happened. What happened? Jesus gets to the River Jordan. And his cousin is busy baptizing. And then he says to John, he says, you must baptize me. John says, I'm not worthy to do that. He says, you must do that. So that what can be? So that all righteousness can be fulfilled. And then he baptizes Jesus. And what happens? When Jesus comes out of the water, what happens? The Holy Spirit, as a dove, comes and rests upon Jesus, clothes Jesus, and the Father calls out, this is my beloved Son. Son. And everybody that heard that would have known this is an adoption moment. Now listen to this. Then Jesus goes into the wilderness. And what happens? The devil comes to tempt Jesus. And what does he do in temptation? If you are the Son. Now that you think you're the Son, why don't you tell these stones to become bread? You see, you wanted Jesus to doubt in his sonship. In his sonship. But folks, once you understand the concept of sonship, now, if you read the Bible and you read some, listen, God, Hebrews 1 verse 1, in diverse ways, in the old times, God spoke to us in various ways through the prophets, but in these last days He spoke to us through the Son. Dis die gesprek. Inheritance. That's the conversation God came to open. It's the conversation of inheritance. Maybe just kyk ons nou lief vir die Bybel. Kom ons vat gou Hebreërs toe. Just go to Hebreërs. Ek sê trek nou soos Frans. That spirit is coming upon me. But let me quickly just take you to Hebrews 1. Oh, you know what? If you take Hebrews and go study it, there are various angles you can take on Hebrews. But if you take Hebrews and just study it from the angle of sonship, it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind. Because he sets that principle. He says, who at various times, in various ways, spoke to the fathers by the prophets, but his last days he has spoken to us by the Son. And every time you read Son in the Bible, what's the next thing you're going to read about is? Inheritance. What's the next sentence? Whom He has appointed heir of all things. Through whom He made the world. And then He speaks about, and then He says the following, listen to verse 5. Now for the first time, this might make sense to you. For to which of the angels did He ever say, you are my Son. Today I have begotten you. I will be a father and you will be to me a son. And then he again says, he speaks about the angels. But to the Son, verse 8, he says, your throne, O God, is forever. A scepter of righteousness and a scepter is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness. And then he carries on to speak about this. And he said, verse 13, to which of the angels has He ever said, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool? Why? Because this is all about inheritance. And then he comes and he says, but what is man that thou art mindful of him? Lord, you thought about man too. And then he says here that verse 10, for it was fitting for him, for whom all things and by all things, in bringing many sons to glory. Amen. Now, listen, you can go, just put that glove, those spectacles goes on and read this portion of scripture, it'll blow your mind. Because Moses was a servant in chapter 3, but he is the son. And so he carries on right through to the whole principle. Listen to this. There must be a reason why the enemy gets it right that people do not take hold of this inheritance. Let me wrap it up in my session today by referring to 3 primary reasons why people don't take hold of their inheritance. And I find these primary reasons in a story in Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15 is the story about the prodigal son. And you're going to start reading it in verse 11 of Luke 15. It says there, Jesus tells the story. And Jesus says, and then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. So they were both inheritors. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of the goods that fall to me. And then the father made a decision. He divided the livelihood between the 2. Now here's the first thing I want to say. The first reason why people do not take hold of their inheritance is simply because of ignorance. You know, we can say many things about this young man, and we are disappointed about how he went about with his inheritance. He messed it up. But the one thing we can say about him is he at least knew something that his older brother did not. Because later in the chapter, the older brother is standing there and saying, you've never even given me a walking. Verse 12, it was divided. But he's clueless. He's doing the religious thing, but he's clueless. And that's why, but here we need to understand, there's something we need to understand, that the New Testament is about discovering. It's about seeing. That's why Paul writes to the Ephesian church when he says, you know, he says, I've heard of your faith, I've heard of your love, I've heard of your hope, I've heard all these good things about. Now that I've heard that you guys are really serious about, I'm now praying for you. That you will have enlightened mind. So that you could know